Me first? Okay. I'm Maryn.
And I'm Christie.
And you're listening to Hung, a true crime podcast where we discuss I don't know.
True crime from the court of law to the court of public opinion.
Perfect. Couldn't have said it any better myself.
So today, Maryn's going to introduce our case that we're going to be talking about for this few episodes.
That is right. I'm just learning my duties.
So this is Florida versus Colin Griffith. He's accused of first-degree murder against his mom, Cathy Griffith, in September of 2024.
And the trial happened in January or February of 2025.
So the trial takes place really fast.
Yeah, that's not super common, right? Especially when it comes to like a murder case.
It is kind of crazy unless he used his right to a speedy trial, and that means they have to go forward even if they might want to take more time.
I wonder if they just thought it was a slam dunk, so they were like, yep, we don't need to do any more investigation, because there's no question as to the fact that this happened.
Was there,
he was
right?
There.
Now, whether it was an accident or intentional is kind of the only thing. There's no one else there. There's no other real possibilities.
Right.
And I do think that some information that came out to the lead detective the day after the incident kind of set things in motion the direction that they went. So what is it with Florida, though?
I don't know. Florida, their families, they need to get it together. Parents and kids, kids and parents. Well, one thing that helps us in this case, as far as things being in Florida, is the whole sunshine law really helps us, or myself, getting information.
Yeah, well, it didn't help me very much,
yeah.
I have to say, because the way that they showed this trial anyway, as far as video that was available to me in the Casey Anthony trial, they did show most of the photographs and things like that were entered into evidence, as long as it didn't have to do with the victim themselves, the body, things like that.
Right.
But I could see the pictures of the site. So I saw all of the evidence with the exception of a few things, where this trial, I saw none of it. You know, it would have been nice if I could have seen where the neighbors' houses were, the layout of the scene, things like that would have been helpful to me, but I had to really listen carefully to the description of the scene because I couldn't see any of the pictures.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right. So why this case? So my friend Tracy from Arizona, shout out to Tracy, she gave me a list of some suggested cases. I believe this was one of them, I forwarded those suggestions on to you, but then you had to pick from those.
Correct. Yes. So for this one, I wasn't totally sure just at first glance looking at it what the differences might be, if there might be enough that was withheld or information that the jury didn't know. But looking into it a little further, I'm personally interested in seeing if this information holds any sway with you one way or the other.
Me too.
I can't really go into further detail than that.
Yeah, you can't. Don't ruin it. Yeah. Yep. So this was an interesting case. As far as the prosecution goes, basically they state that he has had a plan or intention in his mind to kill his mom for over a year, that he's talked about it. He's told multiple people, or he's made these types of statements about killing his mom, and that he finally enacted that plan, and that his mom knew that he was violent, knew that she was putting herself at risk by continuing to have him live with her, but that she just loved him so much that she was willing to take that risk. And then
it's hard to know what the alternative is for a mother.
Right. So basically, they got into an argument. He left, went to his grandma's house. She comes, and the state says that he grabbed her by the hair, dragged her inside, beat her up, stabbed her, and then called police and tried to pretend that it was an accident. So that's their statement. The defense has a very different story.
Okay.
They talk about Collin living with a mother who was unstable, erratic, violent towards lots of people, family members, violence occurring in front of Collin as he was growing up, that he had told multiple people in his life, a teacher, multiple law enforcement professionals, that he did not want to live with his mother, that he did not feel safe there, that he didn't know what might happen. He was afraid that he might harm his mother or he might end up killing her. He said, if she comes at me, I will defend myself and I'm afraid of what might happen. And that he had left because of a fight. And then Cathy was unstable, saying all sorts of crazy, ridiculous things that weren't even true, that she came after him. They got into a fight. She pulled a knife. They were struggling over the knife, and she fell on the knife. And he calls 911, tries to perform CPR, and she bleeds out and is dead.
Sounds like either way with this case, the system kind of failed them. Whether it was true that the system was hearing him basically threaten to kill his mom and didn't step in, or claiming that his mother was abusing him and also didn't step in.
I do know that states in general, their goal is to try and keep families together. If there's any way that they can, they try to do that. But I think sometimes, like you said, the system really does fail the child, the wife, fails people when they try and tell someone what's happening and people don't listen, and then there's a bad outcome. And it's really sad.
Yeah, it is strange. It sometimes feels like families get separated that sometimes shouldn't be, but then families are forced together who probably needed to be separated, which is like, don't know, bad luck. Which is the case? I don't know.
Right. I think it's really complex, and I think that the situations are impacted by who the people involved are.
Totally.
And how good they are at telling stories and convincing people of their version of events, plus the stated goal of the state, which is to try and keep families together if they can. So this case is actually only 4 days long as far as witnesses are concerned.
Okay.
Day 5 is only closing arguments.
Okay.
So it's really a relatively quick case.
Well, the only thing we have in comparison is Casey Anthony, which was how long?
6 weeks.
Yeah, 6 weeks compared to not even 6 days.
I know. I thought this one was going to be like, oh, this is going to be so easy because it's only 6 days instead of 6 weeks, but it's pretty complicated too.
Right.
Just not nearly as many witnesses, which that's a relief.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And not nearly as many hours of testimony to have to try and get through.
I actually have a question because I haven't really watched any trials start to finish, and I'm assuming that a lot of people watching or listening probably haven't either. So the state or the prosecution, they call their witnesses and get to kind of tell their story first.
Yeah.
And every person that they bring up as a witness, the defense can then cross-examine.
Correct.
After the prosecution has gone up. So after the prosecution calls up everybody they want to call up, then the defense can call up additional people.
Correct.
And then the prosecution can also cross-examine those witnesses.
Yes.
And then is there a point where they can call people up again?
Yes. So if the defense puts on a case, then the state can call rebuttal witnesses at the end of the defense's case. So state goes, defense goes if they choose, and then the state can go again, but it has to be in response to what the defense's witnesses said.
Right, and all of these, I'm sure, have to be pre-approved. And so after that's done, then each side makes closing statements. Jury goes out to discuss. They eventually come back with a verdict.
Right.
So the judge is the one who assigns the sentencing, or does the jury also decide that?
So typically the jury comes back with a verdict, then the judge is the one who determines the actual sentencing.
Like how much time they'd be in prison or something
Exactly.
like that. Okay.
Yeah. The one exception is if it's the death penalty case, they have to determine whether or not to apply the death penalty.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. Huge.
So in general, besides that, then the jury just says, here were all of the charges, and this one, guilty or not guilty, guilty or not guilty, guilty or not guilty.
Right.
Down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted a little bit of a better understanding of how that whole thing goes about. Anyway, so first witness put on by the state.
Yep. The state has to pick their order of witnesses to paint the picture that they want to paint in the most understandable way to the jury in their view. I have to say some of it was a little bit confusing to me, that I had to try and wait a minute, what are we talking about? What time frame are we talking about? Hopefully I can keep it straight for you guys this time.
I mean, who knows? That might have been the experience of the jury as well. Oh, wait, what's happening?
Right. Well, and I had to go back sometimes and wait, what date did they say they were talking about? And the jury doesn't have that advantage to go back and say, wait, what did he say? What was that? I guess everyone's taking notes, and later they can compare those notes and see, did you put that date down?
Right. They kind of just have to listen to it all. I mean, they can request to see some evidence again when they're deliberating, right?
Testimony. Specifically, no, but any items of evidence that were exhibits and stuff, they'll have access to those. So the very first witness that the state calls is Laura Ellis, who's a forensic investigator, and she took pictures of all of the interior of the home and some pictures of the vehicles outside. The state wants to set the scene. My impression is the prosecutor right away is trying to highlight the gruesome nature of the crime. I feel like he's looking for an emotional response from the jury and pounding in, look how horrible this is. This is so terrible. Look how big this knife is. Passing the knife around to every single juror so that they can hold it and see it. He really wants them to be angry with Collin and focus on the violence of what happened to Cathy.
Okay.
So the prosecutor makes a lot of statements that are just dramatic, very dramatic types of phrasings about what we're looking at. So I guess let's set up the scene as a whole. Drive up to the house. There's a carport on the side of the house. There's a black car parked in the carport. There's a white car parked on the street in front of the home. There's some mulch on the side around the house there. There's an air pod in the mulch there. You go in through that door from the carport. It enters into the living room. On the floor somewhere after you enter into the living room, there's a second air pod on the ground.
Okay.
You have to pass through the living room to get to the kitchen space, and there's the air pod cases on the ground. Then you head into the kitchen area, and there is a freestanding island.
Just like a table in the middle there?
It's on furniture leg types of things, so it's open underneath of it because
I was like, what does that mean? How can you tell an island was purchased after the fact? Just the fact that it's obviously a movable piece of furniture.
Yep.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So Cathy, her body is between the island and the cabinetry.
Okay.
They describe that just a huge puddle of blood around her body. Above her head, there is a towel and there is a t-shirt.
Okay.
At her feet, there is a pair of flip-flops. There is her backpack purse. And next to that, there are 2 chargers and a set of keys.
Okay.
And the backpack has blood on the outside of the backpack, and it also has blood on the inside of the backpack.
Okay.
Inside the backpack, there's a makeup case, has blood on it. There's a wallet, has blood on it. And then on top of the island, there's a cell phone, and the cell phone is locked. And on that lock screen, there are some notifications that can be seen. And so they take a picture of that too. And the notifications were a missed call from Susan Detman and a text message from Detective Lacey that says, I tried to call you. There's blood spatter on the lower cabinets, but nothing on the upper cabinets.
Okay.
The knife is across the room from her in front of the washer and dryer. I don't know where that is exactly, but it's away from the body.
Sure. So is the insinuation that the AirPods are hers?
Yes.
Okay. And then also, I guess that somebody was getting into her purse after the fact, or it was positioned in a way that, I don't know, that's...
Yeah, it is interesting because they introduce these photos and they show this stuff, but they don't really say what they think it means yet, beyond the fact that during the opening statement, they have talked about this trail of objects that she's left behind as she's struggling with him, is what they've kind of said. So there is a bit of like, okay, who's Susan Detman? I don't know who that is.
Right.
Who's Detective Lacey? Okay, I'm not quite sure yet, but...
Well, also, like, okay, this is the first thing you hear about it, and you're like, okay, wait, why is a detective involved in anything, right, at this point?
Right.
That definitely needs some explanation.
Yeah. And then they also say that there's blood all over her foot. That's also kind of where the backpack and the chargers and stuff are. So some of the questions that I'm asking myself at this point, okay, why is the knife across the room?
Right.
And what can I learn from the blood evidence that's low on the cabinets and it's on these items? And then there's the towel and the t-shirt, which the prosecutor does. He specifies there's a gray t-shirt with a slit in it, he says.
Okay.
Do you know when that slit occurred or how that slit occurred? No. Okay, so I'm like, all right, well, he's calling attention to the fact there's a slit in it, but we don't know when it got there. And there's another like hole at the left shoulder or something on the back of the shirt. So it was curious to me. I noticed that he pointed those things out, but he didn't.
Curious.
Right. I'm like, oh,
anyway.
Okay, right. So those are the things that I'm wondering about at the end of that and waiting to see what else they're going to say. And she took pictures of the vehicles outside. Inside the black car, there is a cell phone, a laptop computer, a set of keys, a Domino's uniform, a wallet with Colin's driver's license in it.
This is inside his car.
Inside the black car.
Okay.
And then there is some paperwork that has the title 2021 Florida High School Mock Trial Competition.
Okay.
This is 2024 at the time of the incident. So this is from 3 years earlier. So it's kind of weird that the prosecutor then wants the tech to read what she can see, like the description of this mock trial. Which I'm wondering why. What is the significance of this information that he is having this tech read? And it's quite some time where it does basically an outline of this case that is the subject of this mock trial. So there's some mock trial competition in Florida. It might be an annual event. It might include...
What is a mock trial? You just make up a case? And...
No, a mock trial would be students standing in and acting as attorneys and asking questions, and they are trying this case.
Like a fake case, or they use an example of a real case?
I think they use a real case, and then they try this case, and they have a jury like that's made up of students.
Kind of?
Yes. So they kind of want to give students this experience. And
it does seem like interesting, but not maybe relevant.
Right. Yeah. So that's definitely going through my mind of what about this does the state find relevant? So she's reading through this, and this is basically what it says. So the victim, a Caucasian male, approximately 5'11" in height and weighing approximately 235 pounds. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the back of the head caused by a smooth, rounded object cylindrical in shape consistent with a tire iron.
Oh.
Substantial bleeding, crushed skull with bone fragments embedded in the brain. Time of death between 10 and 11:30 p.m. on January 3rd of 2020. And then they list the defendant's criminal record, which includes convictions for battery, disorderly intoxication, trespassing, vandalism, cultivation of marijuana. And at this point, he says, so now, just to be clear, this case doesn't have anything to do with Collin, right? No, it doesn't have anything to do with Collin.
Now I see the correlation. This sounds exactly like what just happened. No.
Right. So I'm like, okay, do they think that he got an idea from this? Do they just want to highlight that he has an interest in something that's gory? I'm wondering at first, is this about him? And I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense. And I mean, it was just weird. And then they go on to talk about when this defendant got all of his convictions and the situation surrounding those convictions. And it was just weird.
Mock-up trial?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was strange. So I'm like, okay. I really don't know what that has to do with anything. And, so I'm holding that. Is that going to come up later? Is there some reason that they want us to know that information? I don't know.
Weird way to spend your time. I don't know.
Right. I don't know. And then the white car, clean, tidy. There's really nothing of note in there. And he points out, were there any weapons or, whatever inside? No. Well, if she brought a weapon, she probably would have taken it inside with her is kind of my assessment.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Who was the perpetrator here? Like, who started this?
Yeah.
Was it the one with the mock-up trial in the car? Right. Or the one with the squeaky clean interior?
Exactly. Not a Domino's uniform.
Oh, no. The most violent of pizza chains.
Terrible. And then they also introduce aerial photos of the neighborhood and point out, like, the location of a couple neighbors' houses to where the incident took place. 2 houses that were across the street and kind of what angle those houses were to where things were happening.
Gotcha. So, like, just not a case where it's a house and a lot of land and then another house far away.
Right.
Like, okay, it's a neighborhood street.
I did look up the address because the jury would have seen aerial photographs, and I wanted to try and get a feel for what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. And it does seem like there is no 77, whatever the street name was. So probably the trailer's been moved since then, and maybe they just changed the numbers. I don't know. But it looked like it was kind of on a curve of a road, and that the house in question was at an angle on the corner. And then there were 2 houses kind of across the street. So one of them appears that it would have had a view kind of straight on to look at the carport. And the other house, they wouldn't have been able to really see into the house or the doorway very clearly, inside the carport. So that's kind of where
just kind of showing that probably nobody can really know what happened besides the people who were in there.
Right. I mean, he's busy just setting the scene for what's coming and getting those things into evidence so that he can refer to them later. So cross-examination of that witness. Some of the most important points that the defense brings out is that there were EMS and sheriff deputies that had entered the home hours prior to when these photographs were taken. They tried to perform life-saving measures on Cathy.
Okay.
That they would have touched things, they could have moved things.
Makes sense.
And that it's hard to know what might have changed as a result of them being in there. And she also brought up, well, did you know that Collin attempted CPR on his mother, and this witness was not aware of that fact. No reason she would have been.
Right.
I mean, it's one of those ways to kind of highlight to the jury, but
did you know, but really, did you guys over there know?
Right, exactly. That's really more what it is, because clearly the witness is not going to know that. That's not their job.
Sure, and that wouldn't change anything for them. Like, wasn't aware.
Yep. But she does ask the witness if she is trained in CPR. And the witness says, yes, she is. She says, well, are you aware that a victim has to be placed on their back in order for CPR to occur? She says, yes. And so Cathy's on her back, but also kind of pointing out that may not have been the position she was in when the incident occurred, and that she was moved to her back potentially.
Basically,
so it's hard to know.
Showing that the pictures that were shown are not necessarily an accurate representation of what happened right after, because life-saving procedures were attempted. So, of course, things are evidence,
so things might
unfortunately,
look
has been tampered with, not intentionally. But, I mean, where are you going to be like, let's not try to save her life. We want to preserve the scene.
Let's get a picture first.
Yeah. I'm like, geez, okay, now we can.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then she asks about the flip-flops that were near Cathy's feet and points out that the flip-flops were opposite, as far as like the right flip-flop was below the left foot, the left, you know what I'm saying? So she says, so it's not as if the victim fell backwards and her flip-flops just fell off her feet right there.
Right.
That they were almost like her body would have twisted to put them in that position or something.
Like maybe she was originally on her stomach, because that would make more sense to how they fell off. And then if she was flipped over for...
Right. That it clearly wasn't like that's the position she was in and the flip-flops fell off of her.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
And then there were some pictures where the island had been moved out of the way so that they could get other pictures of the scene. And the defense attorney asked, how was the island moved? What did you guys do? And she said it took 3 or 4 detectives together lifting and moving the island. And it wouldn't be something that would move just by bumping into it or something like that, that it would take multiple people to actually move it out of place.
Okay.
She asked about the shirt. And she said, did you know that's Colin's shirt? She said, I have no idea whose shirt it was. All I know is that it had Colin's name written inside of it. Might have been. I don't know. Might have been his.
I mean, can't make assumptions.
Yeah, exactly. And I do appreciate that it's like, well, I'm not going to, I can only tell you what I do know for sure. And I can say his name is written on the inside of it.
I did not know for sure it was his.
I'm like, this kid is 17. Who is writing their name on the inside of their clothes at 17?
I have a thought about that, actually, but I don't know. We'll talk about it later when we're... I don't want to say things that I'm like, well, I don't know what exactly it was.
Yeah, but she asks the witness, could that shirt have maybe been used to prop up the victim's head or apply pressure to the wound? And she says possible. She also asks about the slit in the shirt and where exactly that slit was located, and the witness stands up and points to it being just about belly button level on the left side of the shirt and kind of a slice across the shirt.
Okay.
And that she did not take pictures of Collin at the scene, so she can't testify as to anything about his appearance at the time.
Sure.
And then she also points out, did you know that the keys that were inside of the black car actually went to the white car?
Okay.
And she says, I have no idea. I didn't ever test out any of the keys. I don't know what they went to. And that the key that was on the floor next to Cathy's backpack purse belonged to Colin's car.
Okay.
And only had a single key on it, which I thought was kind of interesting. Why would her keys be in the black car and his keys be next to her purse in the kitchen?
Yeah, it is. It's weird, but it's also like, well, what does that really prove? She couldn't
Nothing. It's one of those, like, tuck it into the back of your mind to see, does that actually fit with something else that I haven't heard yet?
Sure, that makes
so,
sense.
You know, I did think that's interesting, though, that her keys were in his car and his keys were by her backpack, because it's kind of that assumption that things are getting pulled out or falling out of the backpack and they're right there. And one of those things was the keys, which if they were, it would make more sense in that scenario if it were her keys, not his keys.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know, but that's just something you gotta, I don't know yet what that means. Mm-hmm. And then no redirect from the prosecution.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I thought was strange is that the T-shirt that they were talking about, they did point out during the initial direct examination that there was apparent blood located underneath the collar of the shirt, and they pointed out where that was. And I'm thinking they also talk about how there's this giant pool of blood around her head, her upper body. Well, if it was used to try and put blood pressure on the wound, it would be saturated with blood.
100%.
And if it was under her head, maybe it would be bloody or not. I can't tell because I don't know exactly where the blood extended to. But
if the wound was on her neck, I'm sure it would get to under her head.
I mean, likely. And so it was surprising to me that he didn't come back up and say, was that shirt saturated with blood? No. You know, would it be saturated with blood if you tried to apply pressure on a gushing wound? Yes.
That was my thought, too, when they asked, like, oh, could that have been used to do this or that? And she was like, yeah, it could have been. But my thought was, well, was it totally saturated in blood? Because, or if it wasn't, then she probably would have been like, could have been, but I don't know. Maybe she's just like, well, that's not my job. My job is to take pictures. So yeah, that
Possible.
could have been the reason it was there. Whether it actually got used for that purpose or not,
Right.
I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. So I was kind of surprised they didn't redirect on that because I kind of thought, some of that scenario doesn't fit. And I was surprised that the prosecution didn't try and point that out clearly.
Right.
Okay. Another weird, this is a weird. The next witness was so brief and was one of those that I thought, clearly there's a bunch of stuff that I'm not allowed to know.
Okay.
And that is, they called a police officer from Oklahoma.
Okay.
So obviously this is Florida.
Yeah.
They're calling a police
Don't look at
officer
my face.
from Oklahoma. Maryn, I'm going to read it. I'm going to read your face. Christopher Hyde. And he was a first responder to a shooting that took place in February of 2023 in Oklahoma. And the victim had been shot twice, once to the chest and once to the head. Collin was determined to be the shooter. He was arrested but not charged for the shooting. No further questioning.
Okay.
And that was, as someone sitting in the jury box perspective, like, wait a minute, that's all? That's all
Right.
I get to hear? Because, okay, shot twice. Shot twice in the chest. Okay, maybe more explainable. Once in the chest and once in the head, that's pretty startling, you know, because that seems, a headshot's pretty intentional seeming as far as intent, that you're trying to kill somebody with a shot. Determined to be the shooter, arrested but never charged. Well, I know that someone can go for years without being charged. It doesn't mean that they're not going to charge them at some point.
Right.
Or is that an indication that they determined it was self-defense or something? And so there's a lot of question marks, and the defense doesn't cross-examine, and that's all.
Wonder why.
That's all we get. Right?
They're like, let's be done with this part.
Yeah. Moving on. Yeah. So that was very strange. And as the trial goes on, that is niggling, constant. What do I not know? What don't I know? And am I totally reading this thing wrong because there's something I don't know? That's really
Totally.
like, it was anxiety producing for me to know that there was stuff that I didn't know and that I probably wasn't going to know. And I was going to have to make a
enough
decision.
to be like, wow, this seems like it would be a big deal.
Right. It's like, I have to make a decision knowing that there's something that I'm not being told. And I'm scared that the decision that I come to might be influenced by that information.
Right.
And maybe that would be a good thing or a bad thing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. So that was weird.
At least you know you'll get to know later.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay. You're going to tell me. That's what I'm getting from that. You're going to tell me.
I guess I just mean in general that the stuff that you don't know,
I will be able to discover.
Later.
Yeah.
After it's too late. You made your decision and you can't take it back. Just
yeah. Can we just not decide? Can we decide to just not decide? And you tell us some stuff and then we can decide. Okay, so then they call the two neighbors. And so these are the houses that they pointed out. And so that you can know, like, well, what should they have been able to see based on where their houses were and how much weight to give what they say as a result. And so we've got this cute little black lady. She's so sweet. She's getting ready. It's 4:45 on a Sunday, and she's getting, I don't know if it's a Sunday, because sometimes you go to church on days that are not Sunday, but
true.
It's 4:45 p.m. She's getting ready to leave for church.
That's really early.
Yeah. she's going early. She wants to get the best seat for that 9 a.m. service. She sees a white car parked on the street. She sees the black car under the carport, and she sees a woman come out of the trailer with clothes in her arms, and she's throwing the clothes into the black car on the passenger side. Which is weird to me because that would be around the car from, if you came out the door of the house, you're right by the driver's side.
Okay.
So she's walked around to the other side and she's throwing clothes in that door. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know. That's weird.
There was a young man standing on the driver's side. So that we're assuming would be Collin.
Right.
That she had seen him before, about a year ago. And she says that the young man wasn't doing anything. He was just standing there. But then she describes the woman as being right up in his face.
Okay.
And gesticulating wildly.
Okay.
Says that he grabbed her hair. She hears the woman say, "Let go of my hair, you're hurting me." And then he puts his arm around her and they walked into the house.
Still holding her hair or not holding her hair?
I have a question mark after the end of that sentence because it seems a little confusing, the description that I'm hearing. So the defense comes up and she says, okay, let me clarify this story, and says that, okay, so she was talking animatedly and she walks around the car to him because, you know, she's saying that the car's in between them. And then all of a sudden she's in his face and he grabs her hair. So it's a little bit like, okay, she says about 10 minutes this was going on. That the woman is waving her hands all around.
Watching.
Right. What is going on here? And she says that she saw his arm come up to where her shoulder was, but she couldn't actually see if he grabbed her hair or not. But she just heard the woman say, "Stop grabbing my hair, you're hurting me." And so she's assuming that...
Seems like a fair assumption.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, she said that, but I didn't actually see if that's what happened. And she says that the car was kind of blocking the lower part of their body from her house, so she couldn't really see what their legs were doing.
Right.
But it appeared to her that they both walked up the stairs.
Right.
That she wasn't being dragged. And she wasn't concerned, like she didn't worry, like maybe I should call the police, like she wasn't getting that read on it from the situation, but she did notice it. And she said that she never saw either of them out in the yard area. So I'm assuming they're trying to get at the mulch situation, that she never saw them over anywhere in that area.
Okay.
So she doesn't really know.
One thought about the keys. I mean, if she's throwing clothes in there, maybe that got thrown in there with the clothes. Right. Unintentionally.
Yeah, I agree. It does seem like maybe she set her keys down or something as she's setting the laptop, his phone, you know, things like that, that maybe she put those in there and set her keys down with it and gets clothes and is throwing clothes into the back of his car too. Yeah. I don't know. But seems like she's the most likely one to have put them in the car for whatever reason, intentionally or not. I don't know. But the state just gets up and says, show me where your house is and where their house is. Okay, thanks. That's pretty much it.
As like the redirect?
Yeah. I mean, basically kind of like, yeah, you couldn't really see whether she was really being dragged or not because you look where your house is and their house is. So he just kind of, where's your house? Yeah. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Okay, interesting. I mean, which is like, it's your witness.
Yep. Which then it brings us to the next witness, which I can't understand why the state called this witness at all. Because they called the other neighbor who lives catty corner is what they called it. I don't know. What do you call it?
Kitty corner is
Me too.
what I would call it.
Kitty corner. Catty corner.
Catty corner. Floridian.
I guess a cat, a cat, a kitty, a catty. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he calls her up and like, oh, where's your house? Okay, so you live catty corner across there? You can't see into the house? Okay, thanks. Bye. That's really it.
I guess, I don't know. That's one way of preventing the defense from trying to call her up later and, I don't know, saying like she saw something where like, oh, we've already proved that she couldn't see anything. I don't know, just weird.
I know. It is weird to me because why not? This witness actually is really good for the defense. So I'm thinking, knowing that, and clearly he knows that because he basically calls her up to say, from where your house is, you really wouldn't be able to see much. Thanks, bye.
Like trying to get ahead of it instead of waiting for the defense to call her up and theirs,
clearly,
and then cross-examining and saying the same thing. Just weird. Just wait for them then.
I know, because here's the thing. At this point in the trial, it should be you're bringing out all your best evidence to show your case. The fact that I'm hearing this evidence so close to the beginning is influencing the way that I'm seeing the case. Let the defense call her days later when you've already laid out your case, the strongest case you have, and then let them bring in this neighbor to try and refute and give some other information that seems to counter it, but it might be too late.
Well, and also your rebuttal, if it came out that way, if the defense called her up in their case and she gave some damning blah blah blah, whatever information that they gave, if that doesn't work in the favor of the state to then cross-examine and say, hey, where are you situated? Yeah, you can't really see into
Exactly.
there.
It would have
I
been
have no further questions because you
Yep.
couldn't really see anything.
I think that would have
Way
been the
better.
better way to go. To just say,
Why did you
Can we
call her up
really-
here to say
you can't see that
you
well from your
witnessed
house.
nothing? That's why I called you as a witness. Like,
Right. I mean,
okay.
it's so weird. I'm like, go discredit her when the defense tries to call her.
Makes
and
the defense
say,
look more stupid if you do it that
Exactly.
way than this way.
Right, exactly. You can say, look, you can't give much weight to what this witness is saying because she can't see much from her house.
Right.
So why are you bringing her out to tell a story
weird.
that is actually good for the defense as your third witness?
Yeah.
So dumb to me. It was
Okay,
just
so
confusing
how
and
does
strange.
the defense get something good out of this?
Okay, so she sees the white car come screeching through the neighborhood, speeding and, up in front of the house.
Mm-hmm.
She describes Cathy as throwing her purse over her shoulder, going up to the house, and then throwing clothes into the car. So this is behavior of a woman who's clearly agitated
Sure.
from the jump. She's coming in hot, right? And she's, stomping up to the house and slamming this and that, right? So I'm like, okay, that doesn't paint a very good picture, which is consistent with what the previous witness said, but she has more than that. Right. So she admits that she could see the woman throwing stuff into the car and she saw an arm reach out and put their hand on the woman's shoulder, but she couldn't verify who the person was, just saw the arm. Right.
Okay.
And then they walk up the steps into the house. So she does say that Susan, who is the homeowner, had called her because she was house sitting for Susan while she was out of town.
And at this point, you still don't know who Susan is.
I don't know if it's been clear yet who Susan is, but she has called this neighbor to say, hey, FYI, Collin, my grandson, is going to be coming and he's going to be at the house, just so you know. And she sees the cops and the ambulance at Susan's house and she calls Susan to say, hey, the cops are at your house. And Susan tells her, let Collin know that I'm on my way. Susan doesn't really know what's happened at that point. But then this neighbor, Nancy, she describes seeing Collin outside on the driveway talking to the sheriff's deputies, that he was an emotional wreck is specifically what she says, that his arms were red, his face was red, she could see him crying in the driveway, and that his arms looked red as if someone had grabbed him and he had been in a scuffle.
Okay.
And she calls out to Collin to say, your grandmother's on her way. Okay. So to me, she's seen him afterwards. She's describing his state of mind as being clearly emotional. She's describing his appearance, that he looks like he's been in a scuffle and he's clearly distraught.
Okay.
That's not good for the state.
Right.
And then the state doesn't ask any more questions either. They just let her go.
Okay.
So, okay. I'm getting a bit of a picture here. We still haven't heard from any law enforcement. We haven't heard from EMS or anybody else yet. So we're kind of like, okay, let's see. What am I getting from this? And then they played the 911 call, which I kind of wonder if we should play.
Yeah. We should.
Okay, so
Well,
your thoughts?
I had not listened to it in its entirety. I'd heard the beginning of it probably. But, sometimes you hear compilations of 911 operators who just do a really good job. And I don't think this is going to land on any of those lists, unfortunately.
No.
I couldn't understand, okay, she's bleeding out from the neck. Okay, let's do chest compressions.
Right.
Which, okay, so you're pumping blood out of the
Exactly.
wound. So, okay.
Exactly.
So, okay, now, well, actually, okay, let's try to stop the bleeding. And now let's do chest compressions again. And just okay, somebody's bleeding. She asked, okay, is she breathing? Okay, so, of course, you want to start chest compressions as quickly as possible in an instance like that. But
the first thing he says is, she's bleeding out. She needs help. Right? So you always, if there is bleeding that could be fatal, when he says she's bleeding out, the very first thing you have to do is stop the bleeding. You have to control the bleeding. Otherwise, you're just helping her bleed out faster.
And then, so before she even tells him to do that, she's saying, okay, let's start chest compressions. And then she just kind of like leaves for a second. And then she comes back and she's like, so what happened? Where's the knife? Blah, blah, blah. Which my thought with that is, okay, first of all, I'm like, well, you're not the investigator, whatever. But my second thought with that is, I mean, I do think it's part of her job. She knows there's a weapon there. She has to make sure that the environment is going to be safe for the police or whoever, paramedics, when they arrive, especially paramedics. Or at the very least, giving as much information as possible to the first responders so they know what they're going into. So I understand, like, hey, so you said there was a knife involved. Where is the knife right now? So, do you have it? Understandable, but for him, I'm like, hey, so keep going. What am I doing now? And then it's like, okay, now I'm going to tell you to stop the bleeding.
Right. When he says, the weird thing to me is he's like, she's bleeding out. And then, okay, is she breathing though? No. Okay, let's start CPR. And then he says, there's no more blood coming out. Okay, let's stop the bleeding. I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's so backwards. And then also, when she does that whole thing, tell her not to eat or drink anything. And don't move because it could... I was like, whoa, lady. I know she's following a script. But I think somehow there was a real miss when she didn't catch the fact that there was bleeding at the very beginning. She skipped over that, and then once the bleeding was brought up again, that she wasn't bleeding anymore, then she's like, oh, oops, okay, wrong script. Let me go to the other one. And she starts at the beginning of that. And, he's like, she's stopped bleeding. She's not bleeding more. Is it running out or is it squirt? She's not bleeding anymore. I mean, it's just almost comical if it wasn't so horrible, right?
100%. And like you said, oh, make sure she doesn't eat anything. And like, he's like, I'm not worried about her eating right now. I'm worried about her living. So.
Right. Well, and his first thing is like, I can't get her up. How do I get her up? Like, I'm going to send an ambulance. I don't think she has time for that. I need to get her to someone right away. That is his first go-to.
Yeah, and he seems pretty obviously emotional, especially, towards the end.
I thought, good to hear that. Now we have our assessment of it for when other people start talking about their impression of the call is going to come up. The next person that gets called up is one of the deputies that responds to that 911 call. So there's 2 sheriff deputies that respond, and their job is to clear the home and make sure it's safe for EMS to come in. So they go into the house. This guy, one of them notices the AirPod outside, the AirPod inside, and the AirPod case on the ground. Colin calls out that he's in the kitchen. He sees the knife on the floor in front of the washer and dryer. And he points out that Collin was kneeling at Cathy's head and doing chest compressions, leaning across her head, right? And he thought that was weird. It definitely is strange to picture that. Like, okay, well, that is kind of weird. I can understand why you would think that was weird. And he doesn't have a shirt on. Okay. We know there's a shirt with his name on it right there by her head. He says that there was no blood on his torso or upper arms, just on his hands and his forearms. And that this deputy watched EMS rinse off the blood from Colin's arms and hands.
Oh.
Which he thought was strange, which I also think is strange.
Right. Okay. My only thought about them rinsing the blood off, maybe trying to check to see if he has any injuries on his hands. I don't know. Like, are you cut on your hands? Especially if there's like, okay, could there be defensive wounds or things like that if a knife is involved and he's saying they got in a fight? But still, you would think, like, is it going to be life-threatening? Probably not. So maybe for evidence sake, whatever. But sometimes, Fort Lauderdale, I don't know. Sometimes in some places, it's like, well, they don't come across these kinds of things often enough. So the instinct isn't always like,
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that they might be just checking him over for injuries. That's a definite possibility that I hadn't considered. And he felt like his assessment of Collin's demeanor was that he seemed kind of manic when the first responders first got there, which we can hear how he's talking to the 911 operator at the end of that. And yeah, he's pretty freaked out. And he says, oh, she was kind of manic, but then he calmed down once they went outside. And his statement was, there was blood everywhere, then it stopped bleeding, and then she was dead.
Okay.
Which pretty much matches, you know. So he's taken into custody, put in the back of the police car. So when Collin is in the back of the police car, this deputy says that Collin appeared calm and collected, and they were talking about what kind of video games he likes to play.
Okay.
So then we've got the cross-examination, which she brings up. So was there room around the body that Collin could have actually knelt next to her? Not really.
Okay. Yeah.
So makes sense. That is at least a plausible explanation of why he would be there. So like, oh, okay. I can see that.
They already talked about like, well, couldn't have easily moved that island, so it's not like he could have moved that out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. And then she asks him if they had read him his rights. He says no. And then they're talking to him. Right. So that's like, okay, well, you can't use anything that he said in the back of the car if he hasn't been read his rights. And she asked him if he was disciplined at all for not following procedure. He says no. I don't know. What is procedure? Was he actually placed under arrest or not at that point? I don't know. You have handcuffs on. It seems kind of like maybe you're under arrest, but...
Yeah, I don't know.
And this deputy says that he listened to the 911 call and he thought that Collin sounded calm at the beginning of the call, but got more frantic as it got closer to the time that the first responders got on scene.
Impression as well.
Yeah, to me, he didn't seem calm, but he did seem... I mean, obviously there's a difference as the tape goes on, but I feel like he was trying to be brief and say, like, I need help. What do I do? I don't know where I am. Like, I don't know the address, but she needs help, right? But then as I think, partly his freak out is what's happening, but also this 911 operator is not really, the direction that he's getting is not actually very helpful. Totally. Right? And she's just getting worse. And he's telling her she's not going to make it. She's bleeding out. And she's saying, do CPR. I mean, she's saying, don't feed her. Yeah. Don't give her anything to eat or drink. Well, okay. I was about to do that.
No. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And I agree with you. My impression was not like, for example, like Casey Anthony and
her on the 911 call.
Yeah. She's been missing for 31 days. I haven't been able to find her. I've been looking for her. Yeah. Blah, blah. Right. Versus like, that is not like, yeah, my mom's bleeding out. She probably needs some help. Yeah, I don't think she's going to make it. You know, it definitely didn't sound like that, you know. So, but agree with that it got more frantic as it went on, which also makes sense.
Totally agree.
I don't think that emotion or lack of emotion or whatever, I don't think what I heard either exonerates or damns him.
I agree. Sure. What I'm getting is that this is serious. You know, this isn't just she fell and I think she cut herself. I mean, maybe it's bad. I'm not really sure. No, he knows it's bad. He's telling her it's bad, you know, right from the start. So I do want to say about this sheriff's deputy, he looks like he's about 17 himself. Honestly, he's like got this baby face, this blonde hair. Okay, he's probably really in his early 20s or something. He brings up, like, he's trying to have this conversation with him about, hey, so, you know, do you like to play video games? What do you like? So kind of casting it as like, oh, he was so nonchalant. He just was talking to me about video games. I think that's a misrepresentation. I think that he was genuinely just trying to have a calm conversation, ask him some questions, probably not and even whatever, not
he's
talk
probably
about
not even
what was
that
going
interested
on.
Actually in the conversation, probably more so as a tactic to distract and calm. Especially if he was like frantic at some point and like, okay, let's calm down. Let's try to talk about something else.
And it would be different if Collin was the one saying,
do you like video games?
So, you know, I kind of, do you play video games? I like, you know, so who brought it up, I think does matter. But responding to someone asking you a question, especially any person that's in that type of situation, you would expect them to be kind of in shock about things, right? So that's not actually that weird. And it doesn't really mean anything one way or the other, especially because it's the deputy that brings it up. And and he looks like he could be kind of a peer too, you know, so for him to kind of talk about, okay, you know, and actually answer that question seriously, well, that kind of makes sense. But
Yeah.
And then during redirect, the state brings out the fact that, well, you know, we didn't really need to read him his rights because they weren't trying to interrogate him. They were just having a casual conversation. Okay. So they're the ones that are having the casual conversation, not necessarily Collin having the casual conversation. It's their intent to have a casual conversation, you know.
Sure. Okay.
The other deputy that helped clear the scene, he didn't notice anything about the AirPods till later. And he talked to Collin outside on the driveway. So this is probably the conversation that the neighbor Nancy saw while he was crying and things like that. That deputy jotted down brief notes, but he didn't record the conversation at all. He says that Collin gave two different versions of events, but there's no way to prove that because nothing was recorded. So what were those? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, but you're right. There's no way to prove it, but there's a point to witness testimony anyway. But you kind of have to take all witness testimony with they're sworn in under oath. But like,
well, most of the time though, they do have body cam and stuff. Why don't we have body cam?
Yeah, sure.
But no body cam was recording. And he didn't even attempt to record this conversation. So we don't have much to go on besides the fact that he says that he made some conflicting statements of some kind.
Okay.
And then we had two of the EMS first responders that were there. And basically, they just describe what they see, pretty much the same thing that we've heard. They do say both of them felt like he was strangely calm. But to me, they're the ones that are inside the house. He's not strangely calm when they arrive.
Right.
So that's weird to me because they're in there with her. He goes outside with the sheriff's deputies. How would they ever imagine that the behavior they saw of him inside the kitchen with Cathy was strangely calm? That seems strange to me.
Yeah.
So, and then they talk to him. I'm sure by the time EMS goes back outside, he's in the back of the police car.
Right.
So, being strangely calm, having a conversation about video games with the baby-faced deputy. I don't know.
Strangely calm is like, okay, in comparison to what, I guess? I don't know, because...
I mean, but we heard it. That's the other thing, is we heard it. We don't have to take their word for it because we heard it.
Totally.
So, that, I don't know. That just...
Yeah, but that's super weird.
Yeah. The cross-examination on both of those just kind of brought out there's no one right way to act. Like, people do respond differently to these stressful types of situations. And then they just go into detail about the severity and the gory nature of this wound. Like this gaping, they can see all the way through all the muscles and tissues that had cut through her windpipe, through her food pipe, her esophagus. You know, they could see the layers of cartilage and muscle and blood vessels and all of that.
So did they say, so the knife entered like through the front, through the side, where...
Well, we don't know at this point in the trial.
Okay.
Yeah, so they just said that they could see all the way to the back of her neck, and it was narrow and deep. So it seems like it's front to back based on, or back to front, one or the other, because of how they're describing it. But they...
Right, it wouldn't make that much sense on the side to say, I could see the back of her neck when it,
So they do say that they started CPR when they got there, but it was pretty quickly apparent that the wounds was, just so bad that it was incompatible with life, and they pretty quickly stopped CPR. And,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess there were 5 EMS responders and the 2 deputies, so there were 7 people that came into the home. 3 of those EMS responders touched her directly. 2 of the others were in the area. They agreed that the scene was messy. And then the defense attorney kind of asked, so did you talk to your other guys about this case together before you came in to testify? And, well, in general terms, but we didn't say what we were going to say. But
right.
I mean, some of it, the fact that they're both saying things like, he seems strangely calm when he doesn't seem strangely calm to us, does seem like they've processed this together and they have decided. Now, I don't think intentionally, like, we're going to say this, but, you know, like you talk about your experience and what happened. And I think it's this conversation over time probably has led to this consensus of this idea that he was strangely calm when that doesn't seem to be what they would have experienced from our perspective listening to the video. And we heard them come in, we hear them talking as the 911 operator is still on the phone. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the end of day 1.
Okay, that's a lot in one day.
Yeah, that was just day 1.
Just day 1. Well, then I'll be looking forward to hearing what you have in store for day 2.
So next episode will be law enforcement and the medical examiner going through all the autopsy results. The interesting thing about one of the law enforcement witnesses is that it's a juvenile detective that has worked with Cathy and Collin for a year. So she knows them both very well, and she has a lot of insights to add to the case. This trial, though short in days, there is so much to talk about. And yeah, it's going to take a lot more time than I anticipated when I saw that it was only a 4-day trial.
Right.
So, 4-day trial, 4-episode series. Get ready.
Well, in the meantime, I'm Maryn.
I'm Christie.
And you've been listening to Hung.